Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Rich Berliner from 5th Gen Media, Connected Real Estate, and the Connected Virtual Tech event this morning, day 2 of our event. And this is a terrific opportunity and a great panel this morning that I'm introducing. Just some housekeeping before I introduce our panelists and we get going with this particular panel. I would like to encourage everyone to visit our exhibitors on the exhibit floor and to join in the chat rooms. Also, there are a number of prizes. Nokia is offering a full in-building system. We have a number of Amazon gift cards and Apple equipment that we're giving away. So please join the chat rooms and follow through with the leaderboard for that part of the event. After day 1, we had a terrific turnout and great panels. And so I'm really excited this morning to introduce this particular panel. So I was moved to a panel on diversity by Adam Stanley, excuse me, Adam Stanley, who's on this panel with us this morning. He is with Cushman and Wakefield, and he posted what I thought was an impassioned plea and a very well thought out piece on LinkedIn. I read it and I reached out to him, and he agreed to help me put on some other panelists with this and to be a part of it himself. And I thank him for doing that. And so Adam, if you'd like to introduce the rest of the panelists or let the rest of the group introduce themselves, I'd like to start off by asking you, what do we need to know about diversity in real estate, and how do we get to the point where we have true diversity? So Adam, I'd like to kind of turn it over to you to talk through.
All right, thank you so much, Rich, and I appreciate the kind words. I'm glad that you were able to read the blog. What's great about this panel is that while you'll see on the face, you'll see some of the obvious diversity, but underneath, and as you learn from their experiences, you realize there's so many levels of diversity in the group, from backgrounds and experiences and what they do and how they've gotten there. So I think, I hope that this will continue a really important dialogue that started almost 2 months ago with the murder of George Floyd, and will continue on, and hopefully this time will actually be something different. So I'm on my screen, I see Dana at the top, so I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves. I think we should keep it fairly short because we'll learn more about each other as we go through. But who you are, what company you're with, and why are you on this panel today?
Okay, so you're starting with me. Dana Getz, I'm with JLL. On the panel, I had a great discussion with Rich, and I firmly believe in diversity, and looking forward to having a discussion with all of you.
Good deal, Joe.
Hi, I'm Joe Dighton. I work with Rich and Connected Real Estate Magazine, 5th Gen Media. And Rich, let me know about Adam's post. I thought, as a writer myself, it would be interesting to, have me as a different perspective. I know a lot of the panelists are, C-level, and just as someone who's worked in the industry almost 20 years as a writer, I thought it'd just be a good voice to include. So I'm happy to be here and look forward to hearing everyone's thoughts this morning.
See, Melanie is next on my screen.
Hi, I'm Melanie Ruiz. I work for ABM Industries, and I'm here because I agree with the riveting post that Adam had and just what's happened lately with the George Floyd murders and the protests. I just think it's good for us to come together and talk a lot about diversity and inclusion and get different perspectives.
Mr. Cooper.
Hi, I'm Gary Cooper. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a startup in Chicago called Rheaply. I'm here because I'm an African-American who is leading a company that's looking to work with commercial real estate folks. So hopefully I can kind of give a view from a partner.
Wiz.
My name is Adam Wisniewski. I'm the CEO and founder of EX3 Labs. For the past 2 or 3 years, I've led different trainings for over 2,000 executives on DEI, scenarios, especially difficult, challenging scenarios in the workplace, helping them get through some of those complicated soft skills. Excited to be here.
Good deal. Well, it's good to go. So we're trying to have this as much of a conversational panel as possible. We have a really good mix of folks, and clearly there have been certain things, certain events that happened recently that, with the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and others, that's brought racial inequality in particular up as a major conversation. Again, a conversation that we know has happened for years, but we also know that the conversation about diversity in real estate that encompasses gender, it encompasses race, it encompasses sexual orientation, and other aspects of diversity. We all know that it's been going on for years. So I guess I really want to start with kind of the why are we here conversation, which is, what is different now? And do we, how do you think the conversations will actually change this round versus the years that we've been talking about diversity in real estate? I want to take that. I think I'm going to start with some of the corporate real estate folks first. So why don't we start with Dana with this one?
It definitely, it is different this time. I feel in watching the media and seeing what has actually happened, I know I'm personally moved to my core where it's not enough to think that we need to be different. We need to put actions behind our words and actually do things differently and voice our opinions. So that's my personal stance. My firm definitely fully rejects discrimination and stands together with all of our people, clients, communities. And we want an inclusive culture, and I see actions on our executive level. They're putting real power behind what they're saying. It's not just words, they're doing stuff. They're engaging, they're having discussions, they're really listening. And that, I think that's key, is listening to a diverse point of view, and not just listening, but also acting on it.
Yeah, Dana, I love the word acting. I think, we typically hear thoughts and prayers. Now we're hearing thoughts, prayers, money, and policy. And I think that's the major difference. Wiz, we've talked about this in the past, and I will just share that when I first met Adam and his business, we talked about how do we bring diversity and training and awareness to companies, and he helped through some of the work that he does with African American History Month. Wiz, do you think it's different this time?
I sure hope it is. I think, based on what you mentioned, both you and Dana mentioned a couple of key things: action, money, policy. Those are game changers, right? I think there's a lot of empty words that a lot of people can utter and have uttered in the past. But I think the reason why it's different today is because when you get to a scenario, and COVID pandemic, for all of the challenges that we face and all the horrific deaths and all of the scenarios of the layoffs and unemployment and economy downfalls, the one silver lining, I think, is that it forced people to pay attention, and pay attention in a way that a lot of people have never done before, because most of us are stuck at home, and there's less activity going on, there's less distraction, much more focus on things that are happening, especially politically or socially. And I think this has been kind of an eye-opening scenario for a lot of individuals. And to me, I feel like this feels different. We've seen a lot of actions. EX3 Labs has over 30 Fortune 1000 clients. And just the conversations that I'm having with them feel very, very different. They feel very relevant. They feel very action-based. And I think it's going to make all the difference in the world.
So, the current state, though, Adam, is, this is, so you're at the intersection, and please, definitely, all of you, feel free to describe more about how your roles in your organization specifically kind of interact with this issue. But I think what's interesting, Adam Wisniewski, you're at the intersection between entrepreneurs and corporations. Gary, if we go all the way to the side of the pure, entrepreneur, that you're selling to corporations as well. Do you think things are different now, and how would you describe the current state of diversity within the commercial real estate, both from kind of your client base, but also from the entrepreneurial perspective?
Adam, you want to start first? Or you want me to start first?
Gary, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Adam. So I think a couple observations. I think one, I've been fortunate and in some ways unfortunate to be on lots of panels like this for clients that we serve. So I think a lot of clients that we work with, and they're in the Fortune 100, have kind of reached out as a supplier to them to kind of think through how we as a business are navigating the current landscape. But also, I've been writing briefs, I've been writing essays about some things that we all can do around supplier diversity programs, and how do we diversify who we actually work with as large organizations. And so I think what's been most interesting is that people are taking my call. People invite me to panels like this. And for the last 5 years, I mean, I've been fighting for some of the things that I've been saying today. So I think there's been just a change of who gets a microphone and what we're talking about. And that's been really exciting to kind of see across the corporate landscape.
Awesome. Wiz, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think so. So again, one of the points that was made earlier, I think Dana made it, was around listening. And one of the things that feels definitely different is that people are reaching out to me, and a lot of people know, and they're asking me. That's something that's
Uh-oh.
Can you hear me okay? Is the audio still there?
Yeah, it was getting garbled for me for a second there. I'm sorry, go ahead, Adam.
So I was saying that people, for the first time that I can remember, people are asking, especially clients are reaching out and asking, how am I doing? It was interesting because it's just, typically we've seen this violence, police violence, general kind of scenarios related to African-American men specifically. You see it on the news, you see things happen, but nothing, people hear it and it goes in one ear and out the other. And a lot of times you have a feel, well, that's happening to an isolated scenario, isolated situation. But there's an empathy piece that I think, again, is happening now based on the current events that have opened people's eyes and their ears. And I think more people are proactively listening and asking how they can be part of the solution, which is, I just feel is going to make all the difference.
So it's interesting here. So I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. I'm looking into this panel and I'm seeing people who are at the top of their game. They've started businesses, they're growing businesses, senior roles within large firms. Melanie, you have been a global leader at multiple big corporations. You're all, by any definition of success, you're kind of there, and so I want to make sure that that this conversation is relevant for everyone at every level. So I think it's really important to understand how you got there, what barriers you had to overcome, and then let's talk through how we can make sure that we educate both people that look like us and come from backgrounds like us, but also on the other side. So I would love to start with Melanie this time. You are the poster child for smart, educated, successful, driven executive, and you happen to be a Black woman with the last name of Ruiz. I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear your perspective on what challenges have you faced and how have you been able to overcome those challenges to get to being a global CIO of a large corporation like ABM Industries.
Definitely. So thank you, Adam, for the introduction. I, I think everything that when I look back, I kind of say it's all about like support and the mentorship that I've had. And some of it, and I was even telling Rich the other day, like I'd say a little bit of luck. If I go back, there's some steps and strides I would have made that I could talk about. But I'd say, it really started. I mean, I grew up not in the best area of Houston, Texas, which I'm moving back to Houston now. But we, the area that we grew up in, there just wasn't a lot of opportunities and chances. But I, had parents who thought, hey, maybe you shouldn't go to school in this area. So I had to get up in the morning at 5 a.m. and take a bus to a better part of Houston and go to a better public high school or middle school there. And that kind of started, right? But I think what I learned along the way is, to even for myself, and I think everyone should do it no matter what race you are, even if you are African American or Hispanic, or we should always be inclusive. And I'll tell you that I struggled with being included even in my neighborhood because I was one of the few kids that left and went to school somewhere else. And then when I went to school somewhere else, I wasn't really included there because I didn't grow up in that area, right? So I was like hardly included, the majority of my younger years. And so it's made me really sensitive to inclusion. And then I'd say when I came into my career, I had some really great mentors and people who saw things in me that maybe I didn't see in myself. And I didn't realize how important mentorship is. But I will tell you, again, I was lucky to have parents who put me in the position that I was in to get the right education, but also for the kids that may not have that, right, for whatever reason, I think it's up to us to actually go into these communities. Again, it doesn't matter what race you are. It could be myself or anyone else here or anyone out there, to go and mentor these kids and show them that there is something else. There's a way out. There's a path they can take because they just can't see it. You cannot see it if no one is telling you because you're really kind of in this bubble. And I think that's what people don't realize. And it goes back, right, many years to whether it's slavery or just the inequalities that have happened, over the hundreds of years. It's just hard I think, for at least definitely the Black community to kind of step out of that. So we need people to be more involved. And I think obviously what's happened with George Floyd, it's shed a light on that. And I hope, and I think I heard Adam W. say, I hope so. I'm kind of feeling that same way. It's almost like you see the changes happening and you just hope it continues because we need it. We need the investment. And I just hope it's not a fad. And once we get out of COVID-19, do we just go back to the normal and everyone forgets? So we have to keep this going.
Yeah. Any other barriers? I'd love to open this up to anyone. So just thinking through, what are some of the barriers and hurdles that you guys have faced in getting to where you are now? And how did you kind of overcome those barriers?
So I can share a little bit of my experience. I started in an administrative role in real estate. And it was interesting because I was seeing all of the meetings and I wanted to be included, but there was like this self-doubt. Am I good enough? Am I strong enough? Can I do this? And I was so fortunate to have sponsors, brokers, and women in the industry that believed in my talent and encouraged me. And that was different than having a mentor. This was like my immediate boss or my boss's boss. They recognized it and invited me to the table. And so it became inclusive. So that was the pivot for me. And I was able to work my way up through my organization.
And so that's a word that I keep hearing people, and I think it's a distinction that surprisingly few people understand, although I feel like it's been talked about over and over and over again, the difference between sponsors and mentors. And there are lots of people that talk about having mentors, but those that are truly pushing through talk about having sponsors. Is that true? I know that's true absolutely in the corporate world. Does that translate as well to the entrepreneurial world with the other folks?
At least for me, it absolutely does.
Yeah.
I can say that the first text that I was getting following the George Floyd situation were for people who have stood me up when they didn't have to. And so they've been more than a kind of a person from advice, from which advice flows. They've been people who've had my back in situations in which they did need to. And so I think it's actually reinvigorated me to kind of really dig into the relationships that I have and people who I mentor and say, am I really helping? And I think this moment calls on all of us, Black, white, or other, to really think really about what we're doing to really affect change. And so I've not only thought about the people who've really been helping me as a sponsor, but really asking, who am I sponsoring and how I'm helping them? And so it's been kind of really enlightening kind of in the entrepreneurial scene for me.
Yeah, and I just want to say I probably used that interchangeably, because now that I think about it, the people that really helped me were more sponsors than mentors. So it's probably a little bit of a mix. So I think, I think the sponsorship is extremely critical, and that is what helped me. But I will also say the second thing is definitely attitude, right? So the truth is, like, everyone goes through, the highs and lows of life and things that go on. And it's really just about your attitude and how you bring yourself out of it. And I know that people of color and women and, people that don't just fit the normal, like, straight white male, path is like, so they go through a lot more, tribulations, especially in corporate America, and I'm sure in entrepreneurship, that it just requires us to just think differently, kind of push through, and you can get discouraged really easily. So I think everyone who's feeling that way, you have to continue to just keep your attitude up and keep going and pushing through.
Yeah, I like what Melanie said about interchangeably, the sponsor and mentor, because I realize now too, I think a sponsor, I almost think of someone who's your champion in a sense for you. I think back when I was in 8th grade, I had an English teacher who was kind of championing me to encourage my writing, and that kind of helped catapult my my career. So I think having people in your corner who are willing to do that for you goes a long way. And even in college, different professors recommending me or nominating me for different programs to help me kind of further myself is big. And I think now that I'm kind of running my own freelance company, I'm thinking, what can I do to help aspiring writers or entrepreneurs in general, if they feel discouraged, what can I do to kind of help them move forward? So I think mentoring is good, as far as advice, but the sponsor, the champion, is really what helps people, move up to where they want to be.
And Joe, is it different? So your background is exceptionally unique in that you had a fairly long period in corporate,
yeah,
and now you're entrepreneur and freelance and do you see diversity as different in those two communities, or are the challenges different? Or are they fairly consistent?
I think they have their differences. I think as a freelancer, slash entrepreneur, I'm kind of on my own. At least to start, I was kind of on my own to kind of help craft some opportunities. I was lucky enough when I was in corporate, I kind of started my freelance business on the side, so I was developing those connections then. But now that I'm fully on my own, it's kind of up to me to kind of help build bridges and such. So that's where I think the biggest difference is just trying to find those sponsors and mentors, where when I worked in corporate, there's different programs and things and groups to kind of work with. So that's where I think the biggest difference is. But I've been at it, I think, about almost 4 years now. So I've kind of found my way as far as reaching out to Chamber of Commerce and groups like that, trying to build those networking opportunities.
Okay, interesting. So I'm gonna pivot a bit, and I'm gonna be. I try really hard in these conversations to make sure that I don't turn off any parts of our population, because the conversation needs to be inclusive. It needs to be broad. But I'm going to pivot to the topic of what are some of the opportunities that we see the straight white male population have that we blatantly see don't happen within the people of color and populations of women. And I guess the question is, can we share experiences that we see today? Because I think it's important that everyone recognizes that, yes, this is a conversation. It's the start of a conversation, and we are very hopeful that this conversation will be different. But the problems exist today. There is no equality today. There is no, there isn't a sameness in our experiences, whether we're on the entrepreneurial side or we're on the corporate side. So I encourage anyone who's comfortable to think about an example either with yourself or with a peer that you've seen, that it's important that we educate the world that these things still exist. I'll share the one that happens with me, and then I'll share a positive, a possible contrary. So there's there's a lot of there are a lot of times where in a meeting there is a conversation going on about a topic, and it's a topic that becomes really interesting, and I will speak up and I'll say something about the topic, and I'll share my brilliance, and crickets. There's there's nothing. 5 or 10 minutes later, in a good meeting, someone else who happens to be a straight white male who heard my comment and agreed with it will say, yeah, actually, what Adam said probably makes the most sense. And then all of a sudden, my topic, my comment, my brilliance will take wing, and it'll actually kind of become a part of the institutionalized part of that conversation. In a lot of the conversations, however, that person instead will say, oh, I have an idea. And then they'll regurgitate my idea, and then it takes wing. So it's still my idea that's taking wing. Great. But I get none of the credit. So that's something that still happens. I'm lucky that it doesn't happen a lot in my current work, but that absolutely happens today. And I hear lots of people talk about that. So that's an example of one of those things where even being in the room where it happened, to borrow from Hamilton, you still have these challenges. Any other examples out there? What? I think Gary maybe.
Yes,
okay,
yes, I was toggling my mute button. Sorry about that. Yes, there's so many. I don't want to dominate the conversation. I think before I was running Rheaply, I was a scientist, neuroscientist, and you talk about an area where there isn't much diversity, and when folks from diverse backgrounds are speaking, most people don't give them credit for it. You can unfortunately find it a lot in our research universities and in academia. But as it pertains to entrepreneurship, I think there's a huge opportunity to open up networks. I think the most key thing as an entrepreneur is finding customers. And that opens the doors to funding, although fundraising and VC land is horrific as it applies to women and brown and Black folks. But I think the key to fundraising is finding customers. And that typically is in networks of white, straight men. And so I think one of the things that's been encouraging for me personally is to see folks who I've interacted with very little really understand the core value proposition my business affords to potential clients and reach in and make an intro. And I think all of us, including myself, insofar as we run into founders of diverse backgrounds who are looking for kind of either feedback or kind of intros, we should find ways to make our networks available to them. So that's kind of one area that I think I've seen that could be opened that typically is not open to a lot of diverse founders and entrepreneurs.
Do you see this? Do you see the same, Adam, in your space?
I do, and it's interesting because we, just by I think human nature, we typically index more on relationships and social circles based on how we look. And I think it was 2 years ago we kind of did an audit on our kind of revenue and how it was generated. We kind of started from initial networking and intros and how relationships were developed. It was interesting because even though we've talked to a wide range of clients and customers of all different types of backgrounds, the main buyers of our services typically were African-American men and women. And that wasn't intentional on our end. I think it was just a matter of who looked at us and said, I actually see a family member, as I look at this person, they remind me of this person, or they look like me. So it was a natural extension to at least have a meeting or be open to something like that. And that was typically our foot in the door for a lot of large organizations. There were definitely scenarios of white male buyers or white women or Latina buyers that actually were able to bring us into different organizations. But it's so interesting when we did that reflection on how we got to where we are, how many buyers look like us. And I think being in a situation where we can open doors and create new opportunities by stepping out of our comfort zone and widening the base of where we source our vendors, people we do business with, people we form partnerships with. I think society at large will benefit from that greatly if we get out of our comfort zone a bit and think through ways we can establish alliances with people that don't necessarily look like us.
But what do you guys think hinders that? So I feel that I hear that a lot, and it's such a simple concept. I just need the introduction. I heard an entrepreneur recently on a call with 1871. I believe Gary was on that call as well, where an entrepreneur said, look, I'm not looking for a special leg up. I'm not looking for you to treat me like a charity. I simply want you to introduce me to that VC or that corporate sponsor so that I can sell my wares, that I can talk about how amazing my product or my service is. It sounds so intuitive. Why doesn't it happen?
I think it's easy to be not inclusive. I think it's easy not to be open. Though we have amazing tools like LinkedIn and others, it actually only creates, it only reinforces networks that you already had established. I mean, very few people meet and do deals with people on LinkedIn. And so if you think about insular circles of networks, it's really hard for someone who doesn't have the background. I'm a scientist. I'd never been an entrepreneur. This is my first company. So I had no network of which to establish to kind of break into tech and to break into entrepreneurship. And so I think there are just natural, organic barriers that are set up in the system that we call the market. And I'm here for knocking down those systems. I'm here for introducing people who look like me or who don't to people who might be able to help them. By the way, that help probably is going to be mutual. And that's the other beautiful thing about working with diverse founders and diverse entrepreneurs, is that it actually is better business. Every single study that's ever been published shows these types of things. And so, but to answer your question, Adam, I think it's really, it's easy. And that's why we have to do the hard work and kind of be more open with who we talk with and do business with.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think we have to reach out and be a little uncomfortable and put ourselves in situations where we're not used to. So not networking with the same group. For me, I can look at it as an employee standpoint and recruiting and development. We have to step outside of our norm. So not just going to a college fair, maybe starting younger in high schools or middle schools and getting to kids at that level and showing them the career path and having those conversations. Because for me, a lot of people are like, what is property management? What is a building? I never knew that this was a career opportunity. And there's a lot of career opportunity in real estate. And I hear it within my firm, through my involvement with BOMA, we're trying to figure out how to bring up the next level of property managers, building engineers, people that'll be the stewards of our buildings. And we have to shake it up. It can't be how it always has been because it's not working. So those are the discussions that we're having. And now it's got to be action, not just the discussion.
Melanie, I mean, you are, you know, I think your perspective on this would be amazing because you've been through so many different. I look at your resume and I think huge companies, I think smaller companies, you know, real estate as an industry. So you've had so many different journeys. How do you feel that we can improve that introduction, that ability to sponsor, that ability to build allies and to grow the network of other women and other people of color, both within corporate and entrepreneurial?
Yeah, I actually think I'm in a unique spot for sure, and as yourself, Adam, and the rest of the panel, is we can, the part where Dana said uncomfortable, the other part of uncomfortable is I'll be on conversations with some of, my leadership and peers at my current organization, and, we talk about hiring, or we talk about vendors, or who we want to talk to. I, start to bring up, and it can feel uncomfortable even for me to say to some of my counterparts, maybe we should consider, the minority business, or maybe when we look for a candidate for this role and we talk to a recruiting firm, we should ask for certain profiles, right? And really actually be more deliberate. Or when we interview, one of the questions should be, talk about a time when you went out of your way to be inclusive of other people. Like, there's just things like we need to do that are more deliberate. And it's uncomfortable, again, for me being kind of the only, person of color in a lot of the rooms that I'm in today, and, at the level that I'm at. And it's funny because the organization I'm at, I think it's over 60% people of color as from an employee base. But think about what our company does, right? We have janitorial and a lot of very low wage workers. So there's a lot of people of color, but as you move up, the leadership, that percentage, starts to drop. So we're actively working on it. And I believe, like ourselves, like on this call and others, just need to be deliberate. And so that's what I'm trying to do today is, how can I be more deliberate in making sure every level that we go up, that we still keep some of those percentages? Because like we talked about, people feel comfortable and want to see themselves like at the top. People in our company, since we have such a large, people POC base, right? They want to see their leaders like representing them, right? Or that look like them. And so we need to just, again, think about that. In real estate, real estate is everywhere. So why isn't it more diverse at the top? It should be. So I think that's the steps and strides that we can make, in the roles that we're in.
Yeah, I would, Melanie, I think it's fascinating. I would echo that. And you used the word, I think Dana used the same word, and I keep hearing the word uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting to me is some of my my colleagues have said, this conversation is uncomfortable to me. It's something that I'm not used to, and it's that I'm not comfortable talking about race or gender issues or anything like that. And my response has been, well, welcome to my world for the 25 years that I've been in corporate. But the interesting thing is, I would echo, it is so important for people who have arrived, whatever your definition of arrived is, to reach back, to think about the perspective of others, and to take risk and to make yourselves uncomfortable. It was probably 6 or 7 years ago, I remember sitting and I was talking to an ERG. I have, not only I've blessed and lucky to be, usually the only Black, executive, the only gay executive, whatever. So I'm, checking all the diversity boxes. And I was in a meeting with an ERG, and one of the things that they were saying is just what you just said, Melanie. They really wished more people, they could see more people at the top, and they can see that view. And they said to me, it's easy for you. It's easy because you're already at the top. You're already in the executive suite. It's easy for you. And that really convicted me, because it really, to me, meant I have to take more risk. I have to be more vocal. I have to be the one at the table who will say what someone who's earlier in their career won't say. And I do think that's so important. And if there's, whenever I see other African-American executives, other people of whatever diverse perspective, if you want this country? Do you want your company to be a better company and to perform better? And you truly believe that diversity helps your company, and you truly believe that people perform better when they're allowed to be who they are, then you have no choice than to take that risk, to make yourself uncomfortable, to ask those questions and to push as hard as you can, even if initially some of your colleagues are like, dude, are you the angry black man? Or dude, are you, you the agitator? And it's hard to be in that position. But it is something that I think is super, super important. So
real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have to back up what you're saying with the story about Adam Stanley, because I do believe he's been a tremendous advocate for diverse founders. I'll just give you a quick example. When we were initially starting off, we were looking to get involved with different large real estate firms to provide services. And we met through 1871, a technology hub in Chicago. And we created, just as a passion project on the side, because it wasn't our kind of normal path of business, we created the first hologram of Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech. Adam was at the time working to build an experience to help increase the level of awareness about African-American professionals. And he brought us in a startup that didn't have a huge background and reputation and name into Cushman and Wakefield to present this. And it was a small engagement. But it was game changing, because what it did is it allowed us to get exposure to all of these other executives. Fast forward the tape, Cushman and Wakefield has been one of our largest clients, and we've done repeat business in other areas of more of our core functions. So a small intro, a small sponsorship, a small micro interaction that can help you get a foot in the door for young entrepreneurs or startups that are looking to do that. It makes all the difference in the world. So I just wanted to thank you, one, but also just have the listeners pay attention to that particular tidbit, because I think it's important when you look at what can I actually do. Those small micro moments make a huge difference.
Gotcha. Can I just add one thing? I echo that, Adam W., because Adam Stanley actually has been an advocate for me as well. And so, like you said, he has arrived in my last role as a regional CIO at Cushman and Wakefield. Adam was a major part of me, getting that role and me growing to where I am today as well. So I wanted to say that he is definitely someone we should all look up to in making those intros and hiring the right people and doing the diversity. So thank you, Adam.
So folks, I just want to, I'm sorry, Adam, I want to wrap up. We've got just a few more minutes left. And that's why I was so anxious to get Adam on this panel, because I have the same feeling. And I very much want to thank you, everybody on the panel, especially you, Adam, for joining us and putting this together. You obviously introduced me to many of the folks on the panel, but I owe a debt of gratitude for you raising my consciousness and also being part of this. The other thing I'd like to ask is that we keep this team together after this panel is over, so that we can do some of the things rather than just talk. We can do some of the things and help some people. So we have a platform here and a pulpit to talk to the industry about entrepreneurs, about corporate folks, about lots of different topics. And so we can use the Connected Real Estate platform to help others the way you've helped people, Adam, by writing stories, by putting together other material for them. So I would like to try and do that. If everyone's okay, I'd like to sort of create this as a diversity advocacy council, if you will, within our ranks, and put that together so that we can make progress here and not just have it be a one-off with this discussion. Does that work for everybody?
Absolutely.
I think that's good.
Right. And again, I want to thank everyone for being here today. I think this was a terrific discussion. I wish we had more time, but we must move on. And again, thank you. Please, everyone listening, please visit our exhibitors and our chat rooms. And I think this is a great part of the discussion that we want to have about this topic. And so thank you all. You've raised my consciousness and I really appreciate it. And thank you all. We're clear now.
Thank you so much
Stanley.
for organizing.
Thank
Yes,
you.
yeah.
It was my
absolutely.
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you. And Adam, I feel the same way as Adam and Melody. I didn't get to say that, but I also feel the same way.
Adam, you're awesome.
Thank you.
All right, see y'all.
Good meeting you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Absolutely.
Bye.